Good morning, and thank you for coming back with me. Today we're going to have a little study on the book of Daniel and the prophet Daniel. And like we do in every Bible study, I'm going to break down his name in Hebrew from right to left so that we can learn a little bit more about the name of Daniel. And it's obviously, specifically, this Daniel, as the Bible says. The Bible says this Daniel, because obviously a lot of people are named the same names, all types of names, but specifically this Daniel, and I love how it says that. But Daniel means Dan, meaning judge, and then El, which is God's title in Hebrew. So Daniel means judge of God, or judge is God. God is the judge, or God is my judge, to make it more personal, because it is a man's name and it's his name. So from right to left, we have the Dalet, which is represented by a door in ancient Hebrew or in Paleo Hebrew, and it represents the path, the way forward, or the way in, way inside. Way inside of what, by the way? The house or the tent, which is represented to be the tabernacle. But do you not know that yourselves are the temple of God? That's what the Bible says. So it's the doorway, the pathway in. The Nun, which is represented by a seed, and it represents life or action, something happening and breaking free, right? The hand, or the Yod, means to work, or the deeds. Aleph is the letter of God. It's the first letter of the alphabet. It's the one out front, the creator, the first. He's out front. It is God. And the Lamed, which is the authority, the rod, the teaching. And if we put it together, we're talking about that the path of life is the work of God, and through the teachings, or the path of life is the deeds of God's authority. And that the doorway to the seed, talking about Jesus, will be the work of God's authority. Because through Daniel, again, as we go through all the descendants from the tribe of Judah, specifically from Judah, is where we're going to end up getting Jesus, the Christ. And so God is the judge. How is God the judge? Because God is the doorway to life, and the work of God is the authority. And what is the judge? The authority to judge all things. And so we've been over how the children of Israel were taken out of Judah through Ezekiel in our last study, and they were taken to Babylon. Let's go to the map. I'll show this again. If you've been with us before, then you already know exactly what I'm about to show you. If you haven't, I'm going to pull it up again just for context quickly. They left this area of Judah. They were taken all the way over to Babylon as captives and as slaves and servants. And this is how they're going to serve in Babylon. Now, the Bible says that Ezekiel had his vision 5 years into the captivity, but now Daniel is saying that 3 years into the captivity this happened. So they're relatively in the same time frame. One might be older than the other, but the point is that they're both there at the same time, relatively the same time. God needed them in two different places in Babylonia, and this is what's going to occur when Daniel is there. Here's some archaeological sites of ancient Babylon, which is located in modern-day Iraq, the capital. And this is actually pretty interesting. This is a tablet that was used for surveying. Babylonians had become really good at surveying, and that's what's up with all these rectangles and these squares and then the cuneiform language on it. They were surveying, and they were getting really good at building things. So they went to Babylon. And when you're in Babylon, one of the greatest features that is most popular about Babylon, the city of Babylon, capital, is the Gate of Ishtar, which is right there in this picture. And the interesting thing is, the Gate of Ishtar, in 1902, archaeologists unearthed the Gate of Ishtar, the most potent symbol of ancient Babylon's magnificence. Okay, So they have dug this thing up from ancient times, and it was covered in these interesting tiles, these mosaics of like lions with wings, unicorn oxes or unicorn goats, all kinds of creatures. And then Marduk, this snake, lion-bodied, eagle-feathered, chicken feet creature. And that was all over the gate of Ishtar. Who's Ishtar? We've been over this before, especially if you've been paying attention and following along with us since our study of the time of Judges. The children of Israel was set up and they had judges. Well, the judges kept coming along and telling them that you have to quit falling for the okie doke. You have to quit worshiping Ishtar, okay, Semiramis, all these different names that she's had, and Baal. You have to quit worshiping these false gods, because who is she? She is the whore of Babylon. Remember, she's the patron saint of prostitution. Her cult in Greece, whenever they restylized her, was Aphrodite, and Aphrodite Porne is the name of the cult that followed her, which is where we get the term pornography. So it's all tied into whoredom, and she is the whore of Babylon, and that gate is named after her, the Gate of Ishtar. Also, a few quick archaeological findings about Nebuchadnezzar. This is called the Nebuchadnezzar stele, which is it shows a Babylonian ziggurat called the Etemenanki, and it's not the biblical Tower of Babel, like I previously mentioned in From Noah to Abram in that lecture. Another source said that it was the Tower of Babel. However, this source actually corrected it, corrected me also. It is held in the Soyan collection and is officially labeled MS2063 as where it's held. And it shows Nebuchadnezzar actually ordering the building of this ziggurat, which, to be fair, a ziggurat is a tower. Okay. Also, there's the Babylonian Chronicle 5, known as the Jerusalem Chronicle, which records the events from 605 to 595 BC, which is early in Nebuchadnezzar's reign. And last but not least, there's also this brick, just a random brick, and it's inscribed with the name and titles of Nebuchadnezzar II, the king of Babylon from 604 to 561. And that was in Babylon. So some really interesting findings there just about Babylon, and that's where they're at. So in Daniel 1, this is going to be a lot of reading. Please hang in there with me. It's going to get very interesting a little later on, but we got to get through the setup first. So in the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, came Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, unto Jerusalem, and he besieged it. And the Lord gave Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand, with part of the vessels of the house of God, which he carried into the land of Shinar, to the house of his God. And he brought the vessels into the treasure house of his God. So basically stole everything out of the temple of God and took it to his God's temple. In the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, came Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon. There we go. 2 Kings 25. That's what I meant to pop up there. This all happens in the book of 2 Kings. Okay. So there's like 13 or 14 books in between 2 Kings and the book of Daniel. So to the untrained eye and to the unlearned mind, you would think that these two incidents, these two cases are so far apart from each other, but they're not. This happens during the reign of King Jehoiakim, who gets handed over to King Nebuchadnezzar, mentioned in the 2 Kings, book of 2 Kings. So Daniel 1 verse 4 says that Nebuchadnezzar wanted children in whom was no blemish, but well favored, and skillful in all wisdom, and cunning in knowledge, and understanding, science, and such as had ability in them to stand in the king's palace, in whom they might teach the learning and the tongue of the Chaldeans. It's pretty self-explanatory. Now, among these were the children of Judah, Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Now, really quick, the same thing that every empirical power has done since Babylon. What do? They come in, they conquer, they smash, they kill, they take captives, and then they rename them. They rename the captives. They take their language away from them. They try to teach them the language of their empire or of their power source. And they just, that's what they do. I mean, the Americans did it to the natives, the Americans did it to the African slaves, and I'm sure it's happened to many other times, but this is the closest time in history that I could really show the example. And so Daniel's name was changed to Belteshazzar. Mishael's name is Meshach. Hananiah gets his name changed to Shadrach, and Azariah gets his name changed to Abednego. Now, these three names you might be more familiar with: Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. But their original names are Daniel, Mishael, Hananiah, and Azariah. But the conquering power of Babylon steals their names, changes their names, and teaches them the Chaldean language so that they can serve in the presence of the king, because these four guys had it going on. In verse 8, it talks about how the eunuchs go to Daniel and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, as they're called in Babylon, that they should get themselves ready to be presented for the king. So he brings out all kinds of good wine. He brings out the king's choice meats. And they basically have this big buffet set out. And he says, you guys need to get fat and happy. So when I take you two in front of the king, you look good. You're already smart, but I need you to look good. You guys have been taken captive. Obviously, you were traveling a lot, and but now we got to get you right. But Daniel says he purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with a portion of the king's meat, nor with the wine which he drank. Therefore, he requested of the prince of the eunuchs that he might not defile himself. So instead, he says, I'm going to prove the servants. I beseech you 10 days, and let them give us pulse to eat and water to drink. And then let our countenances be looked upon before you, and the countenance of the children that eat the portion of the king's meat. And as you see, deal with thy servants. So he's basically telling them, hey, I don't want to eat that stuff. I'm not going to defile myself. I've never eaten anything like that before. And there's a reason why, because of the way it was cooked, the way it was prepared, and all that stuff. That's not his way. That's not the way of their people. And he tells them, let me eat pulse and have water to drink. Pulse, by the way, is seeds and vegetables. Some Bibles say vegetables and water. This Bible says pulse, which means seeds. And that's where you get the Daniel fast from. Vegetables, seeds, water, fruit. That's where it comes from, because Daniel wanted to do this for 10 days and then to be brought in front of the king. And as for these four children, God gave them knowledge and skill and all learning and wisdom. And Daniel had understanding in all visions and dreams. So then the king communed with them, and among them all was found none like Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Therefore stood they before the king, and in all matters of wisdom, understanding that the king inquired of them, he found them 10 times better than all the magicians and astrologers that were in his realm. So all of this stuff, now today, because the internet's more widespread and everybody's more connected, everybody thinks it's some new thing to be talking about the universe talked to me, and the universe spoke to me, and it's all about the universe, and I'm manifesting my own destiny, and you're just being a magician and an astrologer from Babylon. I'm just going to let you know. And there is no wisdom and understanding better than that you can get from the great God that is in heaven. Daniel 2. And in the second year of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar, Nebuchadnezzar dreamed dreams, wherewith his spirit was troubled, and his sleep broke him. And then the king commanded to call the magicians, and the astrologers, and the sorcerers, and the Chaldeans, for to show the king his dreams. So they came and stood before the king. So Nebuchadnezzar has his dream, but not only does he want his sorcerers, his magicians, and these astrologers and the Chaldeans, all these people that are supposed to have all this wisdom. And that's what he pays them for, to be in the palace, to explain stuff to him that he don't really understand. It's not in his lane to understand it. He tells them, not only do I want you to tell me the interpretation of my dream, basically he's a king and he's not going to fall for the okie doke. He didn't become the king of Babylon by being a dumb person. He ain't stupid. He's not just going to let these guys tell him any interpretation that they want to, just so that they can become mighty within the kingdom. So he says, you're not only going to tell me the interpretation, but you're actually going to tell me what I dreamed. Tell me what I dreamed and the interpretation, or I'll kill you. And Daniel heard that nobody could do it, and that Nebuchadnezzar was seeking to kill everybody because he was very stressed out about it. So it says, then was the secret revealed unto Daniel in a night vision. And then Daniel blessed the God of heaven. Because are we in control of our sleep? Are we in control of our dreams? Some people would say yes. And to those people, I say, be careful with yourselves. So this is the dream that Nebuchadnezzar had, and it was revealed to Daniel, that there was a statue, and it stood tall, and it had a head of gold, and it had an upper body of silver, and then it had a waist and upper legs of bronze. And then the main portion of his lower legs was iron, and then the feet was iron with mixed clay. And then came a stone that was not made or cut by human hands, and it smashes the statue at the feet. Now, very quickly, I'll just go over what is the most accepted interpretation of this on our end of history. Now, Daniel explains some of it, but on our end of history, we know more than Daniel, obviously, because he's a prophet and he's prophesying all this way before it happens. But he tells Nebuchadnezzar, that head of gold, that's you. And that's your kingdom of Babylon. And that silver that was there is the Medo-Persian Empire that will rise after Babylon. And then Greece would be represented by the bronze. And then the iron legs represent Rome. And I'm going beyond what is possible for them to have explained in the book, because, like I say, we're in the year 2023 now. And then the modern nations would be represented by the feet, which is the mixed iron, and the potter's clay, which means quite a few things. But now something that I take notice of whenever I'm looking at this is there's two legs. Two legs are different branches of the body. They stand in two different places, one foot here, one foot there. And that's actually what happened to Rome. Eventually, Rome got split up and became the Byzantine Empire to the east. And then in 1453, it was overcome by the Ottoman Turks. And that's interesting because this Ottoman Turks was an Islamic empire, and it was a piece of Rome. And Christianity and the Islamic religion are the two largest religions in the world. They stand in two different positions, two different places. Does it mean that? I don't know. So I put a question mark there. I just wanted to put that out there to make you think. And as for the stone is commonly known to be Jesus, and that Jesus will come during the end times and smash the modern nations. You know, that's why it strikes the feet of the statue, and the statue has feet made of mixed iron and clay, or iron and potter's clay. But iron and clay don't really go together the same way the great religion of God and paganism don't go together very well either. And that's why Jesus is going to have to come and smash everything. But it says that rock that comes to smash the statue at the feet becomes a mountain, and it fills the whole earth. Now, just for visual purposes, this map will show you the children of Israel leaving Jerusalem and getting into Babylon. This is the capital. And then the empire is Babylonia, commonly just known as Babylon. Now, the next, just this is going off of the statue as well. Now, the next empire that takes over is the Persian Empire. It is the Babylonian Empire, just much larger. And then after that comes Greece, the Grecian Empire, and all of its influences. Don't forget, they were a maritime empire. They were fantastic at sailing, and so that's why they touch all the coastlines of these areas. And then, of course, they have the rest of the Persian Empire under their control. And then comes Rome, which again is the same empire. It's just even bigger at this point. And this is the split Roman Empire that I was talking about, which could represent the two legs. Or perhaps the two legs just represent Rome by itself. But it does get split up into two different pieces. Rome is in the west, which is the red, and the Byzantine Empire was purple in the east. And one last time, just so you can get a better view of it, the stretching of the empirical powers to the west. So we're literally watching the rise of the west. From Babylon to the Persian Empire to the Grecian Empire to Rome, and then divided Rome. That's the statue. Now in Daniel 2, it says, the king made Daniel a great man after he interpreted the dream, and gave him many great gifts, made him ruler over the whole province of Babylon, and chief of the governors over all the wise men of Babylon. Then Daniel requested of the king, and he set Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego over the affairs of the province of Babylon, but Daniel sat in the gate of the king. So after that, I guess Nebuchadnezzar felt inspired, but he really didn't get hit with a stroke of godly love after Daniel told him what his dream was and interpreted it. He just gets right back to being the man that he is, and he builds this giant gold statue. And then a herald cried aloud. He said, to you it's commanded, O people, nations, and languages, that at the time whenever you hear the sound of the cornet, the flute, the harp, the sackbut, the psaltery, the dulcimer, and all kinds of music, that you fall down and worship the golden image that Nebuchadnezzar the king has set up. And whoso falleth not down and worship shall the same hour be cast into the midst of a burning fiery furnace. So now Nebuchadnezzar is saying, look, I built my statue. Daniel told me what my dream was about. So I built a statue of, I've heard it was Marduk. I heard he built a statue of himself. The Bible doesn't say. But whoever doesn't do it, it's getting thrown into the furnace. And that brings us back to Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, because they refused. They did not bow down. And then these men were bound in their coats, their trousers, their turbans, and their other garments. And they were cast into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. Therefore, because the king's command was urgent, the furnace was exceedingly hot. The flame of the fire killed the men who even took up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And these three men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fell down, bound into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. I underline their turbans there. I just want the Christians who are going to watch this to notice the turban on their head, because there's a lot of grief about things, silly things like that in the world today. And it's unnecessary, because later I'm going to point something out and we're going to add these things together, and you're going to see that sometimes making fun of people with turbans on and praying 3 times a day facing towards the east, you might just be making fun of Daniel. So bring that to your attention. But the Bible says that Nebuchadnezzar went and looked into the cave or the furnace, and there was a 4th man figure walking around with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the fire. And Nebuchadnezzar said himself that it looked like he was the Son of God. And so whenever they were removed from the fire, They didn't even smell like fire. They didn't even smell like smoke. That they were perfectly unscathed. Their clothes weren't burned or anything. And that there was a moment of amazement to where even Nebuchadnezzar declared again, yeah, the God of Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego is the great God of creation. He is the God of heaven. There has to be no other God than him, because who can do this? Who can do these things? And then in Daniel chapter 4, it's actually some moments written by Nebuchadnezzar. And it talks about how Nebuchadnezzar was having a dream about a tree that got cut down, and it was bound up in iron and bronze, and that nothing could be under the tree's protection anymore, or rest in his shade anymore, and that represented Nebuchadnezzar himself, and that he would be forced to go into the wilderness and eat the grass like an ox, and he would basically kind of lose his mind and just be out there in the wilderness until he would come to his senses again and realize, wow, okay, God, the God of heaven, the God of Daniel really is God. And eventually he does come to his senses, and he is stood back upright. And instead of given the heart of a beast, he's given the heart of a man yet again. So in Daniel 5, it says Belshazzar the king. Well, you might be saying, what? I thought Nebuchadnezzar was the king. Well, Belshazzar was his son. And so now Belshazzar is the king by chapter 5. So Belshazzar the king made a great feast for 1,000 of his lords. He drank wine in the presence of 1,000. While he tasted the wine, Belshazzar gave the command, listen, to bring the gold and the silver vessels which his father Nebuchadnezzar had taken from the temple in Jerusalem, that the king and his lords and his wives and his concubines might drink from them. So then they did bring those things in there from the temple of the house of God. All right. And so they all drank from it. And while they were worshiping gods of gold, silver, bronze, iron, and wood, and stone, they did everything they could possibly do to mock the God of Daniel, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the God that is not found in a statue, that doesn't have strange symbols all around, that, you know, the God of the heart and the mind, the God, the creator of the universe. They were mocking him by worshiping their strange little statues while drinking from the items that they stole from Jerusalem. Now, what was in the temple of Jerusalem? In Moses Part 2 on the YouTube channel, you can go back if you don't remember. There was all kinds of furniture in the Jerusalem temple. The Ark of the Covenant, the table with the showbread and the cups. There was the 7 candlesticks. There's a lot of stuff. Now, thank goodness that Daniel doesn't mention anywhere that they had the Ark of the Covenant or any of that, but obviously they had the table with showbread and the cups, because Belshazzar felt like he wanted to get drunk and get wasted with all of his wives and his concubines out of these cups. And in Daniel 5, it says that they were all hanging out, and Belshazzar saw the form of a hand. It's important that it means the form of a hand, okay, or the likeness of a hand. That's important. I won't go too much further into that, but that's important. And he sees something writing on the wall. Yeah, you see the writing on the wall. It's very, very superstitious, that writing on the wall. It's very suspicious. But what it said was, mene, tekel upharsin. And it has a few definitions, but what the Bible says that it says, this interpretation of each word means many. God has numbered your kingdom and finished it. Tekel, you have been weighed in the balances and found wanting. And then peres, your kingdom has been divided and given to the Medes and the Persians. Uh-oh. So now the dream that Nebuchadnezzar, his father, had is starting to unfold as Belshazzar, his son, is the king. And then the Bible says that that night, when this happened, that very night, Belshazzar, the king of the Chaldeans, was slain, and they killed him. So obviously, the note that was put on his wall was just a message. It's over for you, dude. You're done. And they killed him. Who killed him? It doesn't say, but I would assume it was probably some children of Israel, honestly, that snuck in there and assassinated him because he was mocking God. They stole everything out of the temple, and he decided he wanted to get drunk and wasted with his whores and his wives and all this stuff. So they snuck in there, and more than likely they assassinated him for that. And that brings us up to prayer equals the lion's den, because now Daniel is really finding favor even from Darius, because Belshazzar dies. Now Darius is in power, and Daniel is still that guy because he's connected to God. That's why he's not a magician, a sorcerer, a universalist. He's not any of that stuff like the astrologers and those people around him. He's the truth. He's a real prophet from God. He doesn't sit around trying to conjure things up. He just lives his life, and God gives it to him. And so they try to get him in trouble, but they can't find any fault in him. So what they do is they try to get Darius to sign this work that says anybody who prays to any god of any type for like the next month, you're going to be killed. Like, it's against the law. You're not allowed to do that. So Daniel is found in his upper room praying. And the Bible says that was his custom to do that 3 times a day. So these guys wear turbans, and then they face towards Jerusalem, and they pray on their knees 3 times a day. So Muslims, if you're listening to this, your book says, your Quran says that God revealed the Torah. He revealed the gospel and the wisdom. And it mentions the prophets. So it's your responsibility to know what the Bible says, okay? Because look, Daniel, even, you do the things Daniel does, and Christians alike. You should know how many times you should pray a day, incessantly, all the time. Be praying in your heart. But the point is, Daniel's custom is something that a lot of modern day Christians like take issue with their Muslim counterparts. And that's as far as I'm going to go there. But Daniel was praying, and the guys that helped Belshazzar come up with the idea to sign this legislation, they were waiting on him to pray to God because they knew he's truly a godly man. And anybody who did so was going to get thrown into the lion's den. So he knew the writing was signed. He went home in his upper room with his windows open towards Jerusalem. He knelt down on his knee 3 times that day and prayed and gave thanks to God. Bible confirms it. So there he is. It says, now when Daniel knew that the writing was signed, he went home. I've already did that. So then a stone was brought and laid on the mouth of the den, and the king sealed it with his own signet ring. We've been over what signet rings were already. Signet rings are basically authoritative stamps. You know, you got some stamp, maybe some wax was put on the stone. He stamped it with his signet ring saying this is sealed, signed, and delivered by the king. Okay. And that the purpose concerning Daniel might not be changed. Like, don't move this rock. This guy is supposed to get eaten by lions. Daniel 6 says, my God sent his angel and shut the lions' mouths so that they have not hurt me, because I was found innocent before God. And also, O king, I've done no wrong before you. And the interesting thing is, it says that the king was relieved. He was like, oh, thank God, Daniel's not dead. And he said, why would he have that attitude if he ordered him to get killed? Well, don't forget, the guys that kind of massaged Darius into making this legislation and signing it so that they could get Daniel killed. Once you sign something into legislation at that time, you can't really undo it. It's the king's signet ring. He signed it. It's legislation. It's got to go down. But when Daniel didn't die, he was excited. He was like, yeah, I like Daniel. And then he killed the other guys who tried to kill Daniel. So justice is served. And I think it's interesting that he says that the angel came and closed his mouth, because if the angel that came was actually the same likeness of the Son of God that was with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the fire, and there was a stone rolled into place over the cave, that wouldn't be the first time that Jesus was inside of a cave with the stone rolled in front of it. And then that brings us to another vision. In Daniel 7. Daniel 7, it says, in the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon. So we're kind of bouncing in times right now. You gotta be able to follow the years of which king it happened in, because when you're remembering and writing these kind of things down, you know, it's going to come to you as, oh yeah, I remember that. I need to write this down. And that's more than likely what's going on. So in the first year of Belshazzar, the king of Babylon, Daniel had a dream in the visions of his head while he was on his bed. And he wrote the dream, telling the main facts. And he says that he saw 4 great beasts, and they stirred up out of the great sea. So the first was like a lion with eagle's wings. His wings got plucked off. He was lifted up into the earth, stand on his feet like a man. The next was a bear, raised up on one side with 3 ribs in his mouth. The other was a leopard, which had a back of 4 wings and 4 heads. Dominion was given to it. And then he saw the last dreadful and terrible beast. It was strong, and it had teeth of iron. There's the iron again. Do we know what iron represented earlier, if we were paying attention? And he said it had 10 horns. And he was considering the horns, because there was another horn, and it was a little one. And when it came up, it plucked out 3 of the first horns. And so basically, he says, I, Daniel, I was grieved in my spirit within my body, and the visions of my head troubled me. I came near to one of those who stood by and asked him the truth of all of this. So he told me and made known to me the interpretation of these things. Those great beasts, which are 4, those are 4 kings, which are going to arise out of the earth. Okay? Now, what's interesting is that he's humble enough to know when he doesn't know something. And so then he goes and he's like, I got to ask this guy what's going on. This is insane and it's troubling me. So he asks somebody that he knows can give him the interpretation of this dream. And he tells him that these are the 4 kings. But now let's talk a little bit about this. This is going to get kind of deep, and this is where it gets interesting. Okay? Because in 23, he says that the 4th beast, and I'm mainly going to go over this part because it explains all the rest of it. And this is just an overview, so I want you to go and read it. But I'm going to go over this part of it. Thus he said, the 4th beast shall be a 4th kingdom on earth, which shall be different from all other kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth, trample it, break it into pieces. The 10 horns are 10 kings who shall arise from this kingdom, and another shall arise after them. He shall be different from the first ones, and shall subdue 3 kings. He shall speak pompous words against the Most High, shall persecute the saints of the Most High, and shall intend to change times and law. Then the saints shall be given into his hand for a time and times and half a time. Let's talk about this. Some interesting facts. Having won his war with Pompey, Caesar used his position as Rome's chief pontiff to enact a calendar reform in 46 BC, coincidentally making the year of his 3rd consulship last for 446 days. The new calendar was a solar one. The constitutional reforms of Julius Caesar were a series of laws to the constitution of the Roman Republic enacted between 49 and 44 BC during Caesar's dictatorship. Now, with Julius Caesar, we have the changing of time and law, but we also have the fact that he was a high priest of Jupiter, who is Baal. And yet, with all that going on, it's still not talking about Julius Caesar, because he didn't really persecute the Most High. He actually kind of gave them some recognition, because before that, they were considered a secret society, but he allowed them to exist officially. But what Julius Caesar did do is set a precedent. He was the last king of Rome, and after him begins the emperors of Rome. So Julius Caesar changed July to be named after Julius July, and he was changing laws. He was also high priest of Jupiter. So yeah, he was blaspheming the name of the real God. I mean, he had to have been, because he didn't believe it. So what he did is he set a precedent, because even the first emperor of Rome, who comes after Julius Caesar, he also changed August into August to be named after Augustus. So Julius Caesar really changed a lot, and that's why they stabbed him in the back and killed him and murdered him. And out of that was born the emperorship. It was born a new government came after him, and he set a precedent. And after that precedent, another man did something that was similar, but in his mind greater and even more extreme, and starts the insanity and the chaos of the Roman Empire as we know it on this end of history. So that's what he did do. He did start a precedent, okay? But he doesn't even really fulfill all the things of the fourth beast. But what does it say in 24? It says, then the 10 horns are 10 kings, who shall arise from this kingdom, and another shall arise from them. He shall be different from the first ones, and shall subdue 3 kings. Well, out of the Roman Empire came the 10 barbarian tribes: the Alemanni, the Burgundians, the Franks, the Lombards, the Saxons, the Suevi, the Visigoths, the Ostrogoths, the Vandals, and the Heruli. And if you know anything about Justinian, you know that these 3 got wiped out. And further, in 538, the Roman Empire was handed over, since 538 AD, to the church and the papal function. And I'm going to put church with quotation marks in the air, even though you probably can't see me. The Code of Justinian was a persecuting instrument. Justinian upheld the supremacy of the papacy. He permitted, through the Council of Orleans, actions to be done on Sunday, all right, not the Sabbath anymore. The Sabbath is the 7th day. In Espanol, they say sábado. What? It means Saturday, okay? This guy is saying, no, you're going to do it on Sunday. That Constantine prohibited, like travel and preparation of food and cleaning the house. And novelle, Roman numeral there. Justinian instituted a 7th-day Sabbath persecution. He also changed the times and laws. So we have the times and laws being changed. We have persecuting the Most High. We have blasphemy against God, because he's saying now he has handed over all of the rulership of Rome to the bishops and the priests of the papacy and their Roman church. He changed the Sabbath day to a Sunday, worshiping the sun. And he has done all of this. Justinian and the Justinian Code helped some of this. And that's how those 3 tribes became wiped out. So the entire fourth beast itself is the Roman beast. And the splitting up of the empire that I showed you earlier on that map, with Rome still in the west and the Byzantine Empire in the east, well, the western side of Rome is what got split up into the 10. Remember the 10 horns? 3 of them get removed. The little horn pops up speaking blasphemy. saying we are the supreme authority of God. Whenever this bishop or pope or whoever speaks, it is the voice of Jesus. It is the voice of God. We are that power. So that did happen. This is facts. So the prophecy that was given to Daniel was clearly given to him by the God of heaven and universe and the creator. So in Daniel 8, we have another dream that Daniel has. And this happens in the 3rd year of the reign of King Belshazzar. And Daniel, he said he had one. He was in the citadel, and he lifted his eyes, and he saw standing by the river was a ram, which had 2 horns. And they were high, but one was higher than the other. And he saw the ram pushing westward, northward, and southward. And he did according to his will, and he became great. The ram which you saw, having the 2 horns, they are the kings of Media and Persia. And the male goat is the kingdom of Greece. The large horn that is between its eyes is the first king. Okay? So now we have Daniel seeing the fact that there's Media Persia, just like he saw in the beasts, just like he saw in the statue, except this is more clarification for the dream. Therefore, the male goat grew very great, but when he became strong, the large horn was broken, and in place of it, 4 notable ones came up toward the 4 winds of heaven. And just in case you don't know, it represents Greece, but Greece had 3 notable time periods: the Archaic period, the Classical period, and the Hellenistic period. So the Hellenistic world eventually settled into 4 stable power blocks: the Ptolemaic kingdom of Egypt, the Seleucid Empire in the east, and the kingdom of Pergamon in Asia Minor and Macedonia. So it broke, and 4 notable horns came up. So there it is there. It's telling you, he's telling us what's going to happen to Medo-Persia. It's going to be crushed by Greece, but even after Greece shall come 4 notable kings to the 4 corners of the wind, and there they are. History has revealed that God did give Daniel this prophecy. So in 23, it gets even more interesting. And in the latter time of their kingdom, when the transgressors have reached their fullness, a king shall arise, having fierce features, who understands sinister schemes. His power shall be mighty, but not by his own power. He shall destroy fearfully, and shall prosper and thrive. He shall destroy the mighty and also the holy people through his cunning. He shall cause deceit to prosper under his rule, and he shall exalt himself in his heart. He shall destroy many in their prosperity. He shall even rise against the prince of princes, but he shall be broken without human means. And the vision of the evenings and mornings, which was told, is true. Therefore, seal up the vision, for it refers to many days in the future. So that brings us to Alexander the Great, who did all of those things. And the prophecy says that this man would die not of human means. Well, Alexander most likely died from malaria or typhoid fever, which were rampant in ancient Babylon, and that's where Alexander passed away. In the land of Babylon, okay? The description of his final illness from the royal diaries is consistent with typhoid fever or malaria, but mostly characteristic of typhoid fever. How good is God? In Daniel 9, verse 2, it says, in the 1st year of his reign, I, Daniel, understood by the books the number of the years specified by the word of the Lord through Jeremiah the prophet, that he would accomplish 7 years in the desolations of Jerusalem. And he has confirmed his word, which he spoke against us, and against our judges who judge us by bringing us a great disaster. For under the whole heaven has never been done as what has been done to Jerusalem. As it is written in the law of Moses, all this disaster has come onto them as written in the law of Moses. So know and therefore and understand that from the going forth of the command to restore and build Jerusalem until Messiah the Prince, there shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. The streets shall be built again, and the wall, even in troublesome times. And then we'll learn in Nehemiah, they got to rebuild the wall and while they're holding weapons and things like that, which is awesome. Daniel 10 through 11 are prophecies concerning Persia and Greece, more of it. And also, at the end, it will say in Daniel 12, at that time, Michael will stand up, the great prince who stands watch over the sons of your people. And there shall be a time of trouble, such as was never since there was a nation, even to that time. And at that time your people shall be delivered, everyone who is found written in the book, and many of those who sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, and some to shame and everlasting contempt. Those who are wise shall shine like the brightest of the firmament, and those who turn many to righteousness like the stars forever and ever. But you, Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book until the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall increase. And there it is right there. He's telling you. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall increase. Well, guess what? I hop on an airplane quite frequently by the grace of God, not my finances, that's for sure. And I go to and fro. And because I have encyclopedias and history books, and I can rifle through all this information, knowledge has increased. We have universities. We've got the internet now, which is really strange, but we have it, and we can use it for these purposes. That's how I am able to get on here and do these overviews and these lectures about this stuff. So again, Daniel was right. And so he shut up the words and he sealed the book until the time of the end. And here we are going to and fro while knowledge has increased. And we're able to unfold these things that was told to Daniel for the glory of God, not just for us to have knowledge in our brains, but so that once we realize that this type of thing is true and it's real and inexplicable, we should get on our knees and pray and ask God to commune with us and ask God to forgive us of all the crazy things we've done, because we have set up idols in our hearts as modern day humans. Don't think you're too, good for that to have been the truth in your life. And that the prophecies of Daniel are heavy. They're a lot. You need to read the Bible yourself. It's only 12 chapters. And it will speak to you. You will see a lot of other details in there that I could not have possibly gone over in this overview. And that concludes our discussion about Daniel the prophet.